Hey, what's up guys, this is DarkArmedDuelist, and today I'm going to be doing a Psy-Frame deck profile. So I've actually never done this deck on my channel before, which I'm really excited and surprised that I haven't, because this deck is really fun. If you like hand traps, this deck is for you, because it just is a literal deck of hand traps that activate to negate particular cards on your opponent's side of the field. I remember when I first played against this deck, it was probably one of the most frustrating decks besides Ghost Tricks that I've ever played against, because you never know exactly what they're going to throw at you and where they're going to hit you. This deck requires a lot of skill because you actually have to hit the choke points and recognize choke points when you're actually playing against other decks, which is really, really cool. So without further ado guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell on the screen, become part of the notification squad, and let's get straight on this. But before we do, don't forget to check that Patreon out down in the description below, because we have some awesome rewards, you guys, like getting your name in the description of every single video, getting a signed card sent to the mail, or even getting to request a deck profile just like this one every single month that you are a patron. So without further ado, let's get straight on into this. So first off, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Psy-Frame Driver. So you got to play the 3 Psy-Frame Drivers, because basically what this card does is it's the vanilla of the deck, okay? Every single one of your gears has a particular ability to special summon this card out from your field, from your hand, deck, or graveyard to be able to just get it out on the field as quickly as possible, to be able to use it as a synchro material to go in your Psy-Frame Lord Omega or your Psy-Frame Lord Zeta, which I know a lot of you are like, what's Zeta? Well, Zeta is the OG Omega. Like, both of them were released at the same time, but I don't remember Omega as much. They're like upgraded versions. Like, Omega is the upgraded version of Zeta, pretty much. So they're still really good. Both of them are insanely good. Then we play a single copy of Multi-Threader. Multi-Threader is to me just a one-up because it becomes a Psy-Frame Driver while in your hand or your graveyard. And if a Psy-Frame card you control will be destroyed by battle or by card effect, you can discard this card instead. And if a Psy-Frame Tuner is special summoned to the field while this card's in your graveyard, then you can special summon this card but banish it when it leaves the field. So it really helps out just to be able to get this card out on the field, and it protects another card. It's really, really easy to summon this card, and it's good to use as protection. So getting into the gears, we're playing 3 copies of Psy-Frame Gear Gamma. A lot of you guys are going to know what this card does. But actually, the really interesting thing about this to make this deck profile go even faster is all of your Psy-Frame gears share the exact same ability. They just negate something different. That's how this deck is so easy to play, because they all cannot be normal summoned or set by a card effect. They must be special summoned by a card effect. And while your opponent controls, or when your opponent activates a monster effect, that's the particular effect that this one's special to. When your opponent activates a monster effect, and while you control no monsters, you can quick effect special summon both this card from your hand and a Psy-Frame Driver from your hand, deck, or graveyard. And if you do, negate that activation, and if you do, destroy that monster. And then during the end phase, banish this face-up card and special summon by this effect. So you special banish this and the driver. So you basically want to synchro summon as quickly as possible with them, and we do have ways that you can actually synchro summon using them after their special summon. So they all share that ability that you negate something, and then you special summon Psy-Frame Driver, and you cannot normal summon or set them, which is pretty good. I like that ability that you can't normal summon or set them. They must be special summoned by their own card effects, which is pretty cool. I like that. Then we play 3 copies of Psy-Frame Driver Delta, or Psy-Frame Gear Delta. Delta actually, during either player's turn, when your opponent activates a spell effect and you control the monsters, then you can special summon this and a Psy-Frame Driver from your hand, deck, or graveyard. And if you do, negate the activation if you do destroy that spell. Pretty good. I like that. It's really helpful to be able to have spell negation as well. We then play 3 copies of Beta. So Beta is really neat too. Beta's ability actually has a really cool, when an opponent's monster declares an attack while you control no monsters, you can special summon this card from your hand, and then a Psy-Frame Driver from your hand, deck, or graveyard, and if you do, destroy the attacking monster. So it's basically like little Mirror Force. It's like baby Mirror Force, but you get 2 monsters on your side of the field, which is kind of cool. It can catch your opponent off guard, which is really, really nice. The biggest downfall of this deck is for your opponent is if they actually hit one of your cards, then it's like, oh, I just messed up, because then you can just use another one, which is kind of cool. I like that because they don't realize it usually right off the bat unless they played against Psy-Frames before, so they'll try and negate the hand trap, and then they don't know what to do with it. Then we play 3 copies of Alpha. Alpha actually is really neat because when your opponent would normal or special summon the monsters, then you can special summon Driver from your hand, deck, or graveyard, and then special summon this card. And then if you do, you add a Psy-Frame card from your deck to your hand, which is kind of unique to this one. This one actually searches, which is kind of cool. We then play a single copy of Epsilon. Epsilon negates traps, which is kind of neat. I like that, and it also, it's just a good card that in case your opponent's going to impermanence you, or they do something with a trap card, then you can play this card instead. And then we play 2 copies of Psy-Frame. Psy-Frame is a really neat card in here. Then when this card is normal summon, you can target a level 2 or lower monster in your graveyard and special summon in defense position, which can help us get into our link plays for Lambda, or can get into some other cool plays as well. So I just play this card as a 2-of as well. And if this card is sent to the graveyard, then you can special summon a Psy-Frame token to your side of the field, which is also pretty nice to go into Link Devotee and stuff like that. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells. So again, as I said, the entire deck, you're literally playing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 hand traps in this deck. You ought to have enough negates. We then play a single copy of Terraforming because getting to the field spell is so pivotal in this deck, it's ridiculous. So you have to get to the field spells that we're playing in this deck, so you play this card as a 1-of because it's limited to 1. 1 copy of Psychic Path, this is a 1-of of the deck too. What this card does is let you pay 800 life points to select 2 cards that are removed from play or banished, and then add the 2 psychic monsters to your hand. So it lets you get your driver back from being banished, and lets you get one of your like gammas or something back to your hand so you can use it again. We then play 2 copies of Demise of the Land. Demise of the Land is neat because it lets you special summon, or lets you activate a field spell when your opponent special summons a monster. So you can just flip this card and immediately put your copy of the field spell on your side of the field. 2 copies of Foolish Burial Goods. Foolish Burial Goods is here for the trap card that we play in the deck, which is Psy-Frame Overload. Overload needs to be activated or in the graveyard to activate its effect. It's genuinely good effect. So you have to play these 2 Foolish Burial Goods just to send it to the graveyard. For the field spells, we're going to be playing 2 copies of Psychic Feel Zone. I feel like this card, I feel like this card is a 2-of. Because what this card does is you select 2 of your remove from play, 1 psychic type monster and a psychic tuner. 1 tuner and 1 non-tuner, and return them to the graveyard, and then special summon a psychic synchro monster from your extra deck in face of defense position whose level is equal to the level of the return monsters, which we play plenty of psychic synchro monsters in the extra deck to be able to get this effect to actually be live. You're usually only going to get a 7 or an 8 with this card effect, so it's totally easy to activate. But you only play it as a 2-of because it's kind of like, I need it, but I don't need it. You know what I mean? So you just play it as a 2-of. So then we're playing 3 copies of the best card in the deck, and that is 3 copies of Psy-Frame Circuit. And that's saying something because the deck plays Gamma, which is one of the most powerful hand traps in the entire game. But what this card does is if a Psy-Frame monster is special summoned to your side of the field, then you can immediately, after this card resolves, synchro summon a synchro monster using those Psy-Frame monsters you control. So basically, you look at the deck and it's like, okay, well, how am I going to synchro summon if I activate this on my opponent's turn and then it banishes itself during the end phase? How am I going to do that? So the way that you actually do it is you negate something on your opponent's side of the field, like the Gamma, and then you can immediately synchro summon after you special summon these guys out to your side of the field to summon out your Omega. And then Omega has the ability that once per turn, it also has the ability that once per turn during the main phase, you can quick effect banish both this card and a card from your opponent's hand. So it removes itself from the equation, and then you get another activation where you can summon out another Psy-Frame, which is really cool, and then this comes back on your turn. So that's why it's so good in this deck. So it also has the ability that if a Psy-Frame monster you control battles an opponent's monster, you can discard a Psychic Frame or Psy-Frame monster, and then your battling monster gains attack equal to the one that you discarded, which is usually not that much. I mean, you can gain up to 25 with Driver, but every other Psy-Frame monster, I think the biggest one is actually Delta at 1200 besides the Driver. So you're only going to go up by 1200 or 2500, which can be a lot and can bring up your Omega all the way up to 4000 if you actually discard the Delta. So then we're playing 3 copies of Call by the Grave because, yes, we are playing hand traps deck, but we don't want to get hand trapped because you're special summoning from your hand, deck, or graveyard. This is really important to activate the Call by the Grave if our opponent tries to Ash Blossom this. The only real reason I'm playing this is for Ash Blossom. So that's it for the spells, guys. Let's get into the traps. So for the traps, we are going to be playing just a few, and that is going to be a single copy of Metaverse because you, again, need to get your field spells as quickly as possible. Even if you just set this and then grab your copy of the Psy-Frame Circuit from your deck, it's really important to get that in your hand and keep it. Then we play 3 copies of Drowning Mirror Force. Now, this card can actually be a really good bait card because if your opponent doesn't activate anything crazy during their turn and you don't see a choke point, then you can leave this card set, and when your opponent attacks into you, you can flip it and then send all their monsters back into the deck, and then it's like, oh, well, we've got a problem now. Or if you actually summon out your copy of Omega and then banish a card from their hand, but they still don't have anything to negate this, you can keep this set, and then when your opponent activates you directly while this card's not on the field, then you can just immediately send all the cards back to the deck, and then when your turn comes around, summon your copy of Omega and then start poking at them with the Omega and the Zeta, which is really cool. We then played 3 copies of Psy-Frame Overload. Overload's really good in the deck because basically what this card does is once per turn, you can banish a Psy-Frame monster you control from your hand or face up from your side of the field, and then you get to target one card on the field and banish it face down, which is pretty good. And then it also has the ability that during either player's turn, except the turn this card was sent to the graveyard, you can banish this card from your graveyard to add a Psy-Frame card from your deck to your hand. That's a pretty good effect. I really like that effect to be able to just immediately grab a Psy-Frame card from my deck. If this card is in the graveyard, I can just banish it and immediately do that. So that's really a good effect. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we're going to be playing a single copy of Omega because this card's still at 1. Wah, wah. And basically, if you guys don't know what this does, it can rip a card out of your opponent's hand during the main phase, and if this card is in your graveyard, then you can target one of your banished cards and return to the graveyard. And if this card's in your graveyard, then you can target one other card in the graveyard, shuffle both this and that card into the deck. And then during either player's standby phase, you can target a banished card and return it to the graveyard as well while it's on the field. So it has a field effect where you can rip a card out of your opponent's hand, you can put a card back in the graveyard, and you can also target a card in the graveyard while this card's in the graveyard and put it both back into the deck, which is pretty cool. We then played 2 copies of Zeta, which a lot of you guys, if you haven't played Psy-Frames, are not going to know what this card does, because this card is really weird, and nobody ever played this card besides Psy-Frames. What this card does is once per turn, during either player's turn, you can target a special summon monster on the field in face of attack position, and banish both it and this card from the field, but return them during the next standby phase. And if this card is in your graveyard, you can target another Psy-Frame card in your grave and return this card to the extra deck, and if you do, add that card to your hand. So it has recovery, which is really good. It also gets a special summon monster off the field, which is going to be also really good, and it's 2500 beat stick, so it's a really good card. Now, I'm going to be playing a card in this deck that you probably haven't seen in a long time, and that is a single copy of Thought Ruler Archfiend, which is really, really good. When this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle and sends it to the graveyard, you gain life points equal to the original attack of that monster. And you can pay 1,000 life points to negate the activation of a spell or trap that targets a psychic monster and destroy it, which is pretty good as well. It's really easy to summon this card with Psychic Field Zone, so you play it as a we play a single copy of Scarlet Red Dragon Archfiend because it's a good synchro monster to go into to board wipe the field. Crystal Wing is really easy to go into in this deck because you can just use one of your level 1 synchro or one of your level 1 tuner monsters plus any of your synchro monsters that are level 7 to go into this card, so it's really easy. Dawn Dragster because it gives you an additional negates. Black Rose, again, it blows board, so why not? And then Psychic Life Transfer. This card is a really interesting card. It's our level 7 target for the Psychic Field Zone. And it lets you once per turn, you banish a Psychic monster to gain 1,200 life points, which is pretty good. And it being a 2,400 beat stick is not bad. But you usually want to summon out this copy of the Zeta, but it does come in handy sometimes. Then we play for the Link monsters. You play 2 copies of Lambda. Lambda is really interesting because it lets you activate your Psy-Frame gears from your hand while you do control monsters. So it removes the only restriction this entire deck has. So you want to go into Lambda as quickly as possible. And if a face-up Psychic monster you control is banished face-up while you control this monster, then you can activate this effect during the end phase. You can add a Psy-Frame card from your deck to your hand. So you really want to get Lambda out on your side of the field as quickly as possible. We then play a single copy of Link Devotee and Link Disciple. The reason you play these is because you play the copy of the gadget, the Cyverse gadget, because you can normal summon that out and link it away to summon one of these, and then you get the token and link into the other one, and then you contribute it, the copy of your Disciple or Devotee off of the Disciple effect, draw a card, and then special summon 2 tokens, and then go into your Psy-Frame Lambda with one of these or 2 of these on your side of the field. It's really easy to go into and use these to go off, and it's just a good draw card and getting those tokens on your side of the field. And plus, they're both level 1s, which is really cool to be able to just use one of them to go for Link Rebo. And then you can use Link Rebo and whichever one you have left, which is going to be the Disciple, to be able to link those two together to go directly into your Lambda. Then we play a single copy of Salamangreat Alamirage, because if you do get a monster on your side of the field that was normal summon, like your copy of Gadget, then you can link it away, which is pretty cool. I like that ability to just be able to get into the Alamirage. It really helps out to be able to get the Alamirage out on your side of the field. Sometimes you don't really go into it all that much. You really use these more, but it comes up. So that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you did enjoy it. It's a really fun deck to play around with. I highly recommend that you guys give it a try, especially if you have Gammas after the Toon Chaos reprint. Like, I cannot tell you how many Gammas I have after all the openings that I've done of Toon Chaos on the channel. But I really wanted to build this deck because I noticed that when I started pulling Gammas, I was like, wow, I've never done a Cyverse deck profile. Really? So I figured I would do it. So anyways, guys, this is DarkArmedDuelist. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Hit the bell on there so you can become part of the notification squad. And definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below. And I'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.